Today on Talking Solutions, it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Marlene Richter is with us, Executive Director of the Shade Tree. Marlene, would you mind it if I said to you, I wish we had no need for any kind of domestic violence shelter?
Absolutely. I already have a plan for the building. So together as a community, let's make that happen.
I wish it was that easy. I think one of the main things we've got to do is increase awareness about domestic violence. And yet we do have multiple domestic violence shelters. And before the show started, I know you mentioned, unfortunately, we could use more than we currently have.
That's absolutely true. We could easily add 2 more shelters and today fill them up with people that are fleeing domestic violence situations.
We got to get the word out and see what we can do to help. That's what this talk is all about. Marlene, can you tell us a little bit about Shade Tree?
For 25 years, the Shade Tree has been in our community. It started as a small organization in the basement of a church, and now we're in this 38,000 square foot building with the space to shelter up to 364 women and children every day. We have people arriving 24 hours a day, and not only are the people arriving, but they bring their pets with them. And for 8 years, we've been able to provide that really awesome solution that there's nothing that stands in the way for someone to come in and receive services, including having a dog or cat or a pet that they feel is in danger or that they don't need to go back and rescue after they've come into safety. We also have a medical clinic, so we're able to care for the wounds of the body. We're able to make sure that the women and the children are up to date on vaccinations and have dental care and their eyeglasses repaired if those were broken or lost along the way. We also have a case management program that sets in place the map of where they're going to go, how they're going to get there, and what resources we have or our community has to help out. So 2 programs we offer is an emergency shelter and a transitional housing program. The emergency shelter is our biggest service that we provide to the community. Last year, we sheltered just over 6,500 women and children. We thought we were going to help about 4,500, and we went right past that number and kept right on going because the community helps us do that. We just kept saying, come in, and we'll help. That's our short-term program up to about 3 months. The women and children can stay. And then our long-term program is up to a year. It's right there in the same building on the same campus. And some people decide that that's a good fit for them. And then for the others, we work with our community partners or even other cities and states and move the people safely there. Whatever the right answer is for them, that's how we connect them back to safety.
Marlene Richter is with us, the Executive Director of the Shade Tree Domestic Violence Shelter. You mentioned moving some of these people who are going through this experience out of town. Not a bad idea.
Sometimes it's just not going to be safe here, whether it's because the person didn't get arrested or they're too fearful to file a police report, and that's okay. We're not going to be doing the thinking about what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing. All we care about is that today they're safe and where do they want to go from here. So we help connect them to other cities and other states, and likewise, we receive people from other cities and other states. 20 years ago and 25 years ago, we talked about this underground railroad that moved victims from shelter to shelter, and now we talk about moving survivors from state to state because they're making the plan, they're making the decision, and they're deciding how they're going to survive this.
You're helping these domestic violence victims turn into survivors.
Yes.
Launching them for the rest of their life.
And their children. We're hoping that we're going to stop this generational tragedy where the kids see this is what's happening between their parents, and then they grow up and they don't have other skills, they don't have other mindsets, they don't like it, they don't want it, but they don't know how to prevent it. So now, not only do we serve the women, but we also give the kids tools for avoiding violence, avoiding drugs, avoiding bullying. And we actually just launched a huge program that every single school-age child that lives in our shelter, more than 2,000 a year, is going to receive those skills. If they're with us for a week, if they're with us for a month, we're building their skill set to avoid growing up into an adult that violence is a part of their thinking.
You're going to stop the cycle of violence.
That is our plan. And we know that with all of the campaigns that are running in our schools, in our communities, in our places of worship, that together we can make this happen. It's going to take a 100% effort first to say that everybody has a right to their own space, to their own choices, and that we don't have a tolerance for hurting other people, for forcing other people to do things that are against their will. Not in a marriage, not in a family, and not in a community.
Zero tolerance.
That's right.
I wonder, Marlene, does domestic violence always take a physical form, or are there other types of abuse?
Oh, my goodness. The emotional abuse, the emotional entanglement that happens between somebody who's going to control and somebody who is in a romantic relationship can start all the way in a dating relationship where they might not, thankfully, ever be physically hurt, but the emotional trauma stays with them for such a long time. They're told they're not good enough. If only they had tried harder, said something different, dressed different, gotten there earlier, been on time. And no matter how on time somebody is, it's never right. Talking down and talking at and less than thinking begins to make them think, I really care about this person. I want to be better. I want to be different. They start to doubt themselves, and then that's when the control starts to take. It can happen over the phone. It can happen through the internet. It can happen face to face. And they don't know that they're thinking about themselves as being challenged until they're way down the road and realizing that they've been completely lost from their family interactions, their friends, their workplace, that they're completely reliant on the input from the abuser. And that's the voice in their head.
The abuser can also say, I don't like your friends. I don't think you should hang around with them anymore. You need to spend time with me and me alone.
And they're against us. They just don't understand how good I am for you and how much I want you to be better. The separation starts in very subtle ways, complaining about going out to lunch with people, even if it didn't take time away from the romantic relationship. And then it continues through not allowing them to speak on the phone, not allowing them to have family holidays, not allowing them to keep traditions that have been a part of their family forever. And it subtly separates until the time that there is no one else left in a face-to-face friendly way except what that abuser allows.
I was wondering about that. If the abuse, whatever form, if it happens suddenly or if it came on in some cases over time, how they just kind of tighten down, pull you away from other people, keep you closer, control you more.
It all depends on the manipulation of the controller. It can happen fast. It can happen very rapidly where over the course of a few dates, you have somebody who's stalking, who's at every turn watching what they're doing, taking away their phone, giving them a new phone, and knowing what every move they make could be. And it can happen literally suddenly. And then there are other relationships that over a period of time, Prince Charming becomes their worst nightmare.
Scary thought. Wow. Shade Tree Shelter is what we're discussing today. And in a more general way, we're talking about domestic violence. Marlene, I don't think we should have a Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It needs to be 365, 24/7.
That's right. If we're going to save the lives of the people that are in jeopardy, then 12 months out of the year, we have to listen about what's going on next door if we live in apartments, what's happening for our friends, our family, our coworkers, college roommates, all of the different relationships that we have in our circles of trust and circles of influence. Watch for those changes and ask people, help them create a safety plan to get out when you see the signs of abuse.
That's what I'm curious about, cautionary signs, because if we are blessed enough to not have to deal personally with domestic violence, it's what I want for everyone. But what are some of the cautionary signs we can look for in other people, in our friends, in our family, in our coworkers, neighbors?
We talked a little bit about that separation and that isolation and emotional abuse. There's also financial abuse. There is the complete controlling of financial resources. Sometimes the person who's the victim is the only breadwinner of the household. That doesn't mean that they have the ability then to control what happens with their money. So if you see signs that somebody has literally no resources to buy a meal, to buy a bottle of water, or if you all are going out, that they're taking a pass every single time, it might just be the tight economy and it might just be their bills, but it also could be something else. Don't be afraid to ask, are you okay? Are your finances okay? Maybe they'll share with you what's happened, but they also might say, this is my boyfriend's desire that he control all the money, or that he's going to manage our finances so that we can, whatever the end of the sentence is, just be aware. And then, of course, there's the tragedy of the physical abuse, and that ranges everywhere from domestic rape to strangulation to slapping, hitting, punching, kicking, even wounding them in parts of their body that you can't see. Missed work, change changes in their lifestyle where they might not be putting on a bathing suit and coming out in public where they would have before. Just watch for all of those changes and all of those signs. And don't be afraid of saying what happened, because at the right time and the right moment, when enough is enough, that victim might be ready to become a survivor and might be ready to say to you, this is what situation I'm in, and together you can help them get free.
Worst thing I can think of is to have a friend who's going through a domestic violence situation, and I don't actually know everything about it, but those little signs that you've just mentioned are there, and I'm not being aware of them. I'm not acting on them. I'm not being a caring enough individual to say to that friend, are you okay?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help?
It's really scary to ask that question sometimes because we think that we're going to push them away, or that we're going to make it worse, or that they're not going to want to be our friend. That couldn't be farther from the truth in the terms of rescuing, because when the people call the shade tree, when they come into the shade tree, they've been keeping this secret for such a long time. They're ready for help. They're ready for somebody to know what's been happening to them. They might not tell us everything, but they tell us enough, and they tell the police enough, and they tell hotlines enough that they can get the help. And if you ask that one question, that might be the time that they're ready to share. And if they say no, you don't have to call them out on it. You can leave it alone and come back to it later. At least they know that you're there, and that if they're ready to come to you later, you already brought it up and you open the door for safety.
I put it out there to my friend, look, I understand. If you ever need my help, I'm here. I don't want to butt into their life, but I do want to help them if they're in a situation like that. How can I help someone who says, okay, I do want to talk about this.
Yes.
I think I need to open up, and I appreciate you giving me the chance. How can I help that person?
You can say, do you want to go to a shelter? Or can we take you to a place that's safe that they can help you put together a safety plan? Can I help with your children? Can we go get them now and bring everybody to safety? And always seize the moment. If they say that they're ready to talk, don't make it later, because later might not come back up, or they might get afraid. So use that opportunity to say, I'm going to take you now if you're ready to go now. Or if you'll give us that code word of when you are ready to go, let it be something that's a secret just between the two of you, that when that friend says that word, you know it's time to meet them at the place you decided, whether it's a convenience store, the child's school, or work, whatever, it doesn't matter. Make it a safe place that's away from the house or their apartment, or wherever their known place that the abuser could be, and then pick them up or meet them there and get on the phone for safety. That safety includes dialing 911. Never be afraid to do that.
It's worth their life.
That's right.
It comes down to that. We see on the news all the time stories about these protectionary orders that are ignored.
Yes.
The abuser, that piece of paper is not going to stop them.
That's right.
They are determined to do this. So when the person who is being abused, who's in that domestic violence situation, says, I'm ready, we might not have a lot of time.
That's right. And it's a very dangerous time. Always involve the police if there are thoughts that there could be weapons or that there could be a threat on the person's life. We don't have to figure it all out right there. Just know that if the victim says that her life or his life is in danger, then make the call for them, with them, to get the police involved, because nobody's an expert about these matters better than the police. They know exactly how to assess the situation, and they know exactly what to do in those times and places. And it's not going to be a bad idea to call the police. It's not going to be something that your friend is not going to understand. In fact, they're going to be grateful that all of that help is coming forward.
How many times have we heard from police officers that domestic violence calls are the most dangerous ones that they encounter? So when we say that this is a dangerous situation, we're not kidding. Even the officers themselves say this is a dangerous situation.
That's absolutely true. And they do amazing work. They bring all of the resources together, no matter who we're talking about, North Las Vegas, or Henderson. They bring those resources right to the place that they need to be. So don't be afraid to make that call. If it's not life-threatening, you're always free to call 311 to get guidance about that. Also, the medical care, the entire medical profession is just standing by ready to help, whether it's an emergency room or an urgent care. You can get free from those situations in that office as well. They're trained too.
I know, Marlene, that we are talking to someone out there who is experiencing domestic violence.
Yes.
Even if they're not ready to take action on it quite yet, let us give you some information. Let us give you some options. And the Shade Tree Shelter you said you helped about 6,000 women and children and some men.
Yes.
What is the proportion? I mean, I imagine it's not a lot of men, but I don't want to exclude them. They also can be victims of domestic violence.
We don't shelter the men, but we link them with services for safe shelter, for counseling, and for the resources that they're in need of as well. You know, there's always this bias about it being a weaker versus a stronger. That doesn't have anything to do with domestic violence. It has to do with control and abuse and that desire to control. Women are as capable of picking up a gun, of picking up a weapon and saying, I demand that you do this. And the person that's in a romantic relationship with them is in just as much danger. It doesn't have anything to do with gender. The proportion that we're helping, we only get a few calls from men seeking shelter. There are other hotlines. There's a national hotline and there's state resources that are available. And the men are as eligible for those services as women, whether it's being enrolled in the VINE network when the female goes to jail and then they can get notification if she's released or when she's released after the prison sentence. All of those same resources are available for men. But for the Shade Tree, we're the shelter for women and children, and then we connect men to other resources. I did want to tell you that one of the ways that we try to remove a barrier to coming in is actually this month we launched an app for Droid phones. In the Play Store, you can search for the Shade Tree and download that app for your phone. It will tell you about volunteer opportunities. It will tell you a little bit about the services, but most important, when you encounter that person that is in danger, you can show them that app right there on your phone. They can check into the Shade Tree. It will send a message to us that they're on their way. It will answer right away and say, we're expecting you. Then we're ready at the front door. The door is always open and they can come into safety.
Wow, I've heard the phrase there's an app for that, but I never had any idea.
Yes, we just launched it.
That's great.
Some amazing volunteers in Florida that were experts in technology volunteered their time and services to create it. And we know that young people are used to their phones and they're used to literally having what they need immediately. And this was in response to that. The shelter is there immediately. All they have to do is either come in or use the app to check in.
Marlene Richter is the executive director of the Shade Tree Domestic Violence Shelter here in town. 25 years. Also, that app, let me go back to one of the things you mentioned. It's not just for victims of domestic violence. It also offers volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely. We could not survive one single day without our amazing volunteers. We have motivational speakers. We have support groups, domestic violence support group, rape support groups. We have NA, AA, and GA right there on site so that people that are in recovery can keep right on going with their goals that they've set for themselves. We have people that come in and tutor the kids to help them get caught up, because when kids are in those violent households, the last thing that they can think about is being successful at school. But when they get into shelter, they're ready. And so we want to help them catch up and pass that grade and graduate from high school and have a successful adulthood. We have volunteers that come in and just help us sort donations, diapers and hygiene items, food, clothes, blankets, you name it, we need the volunteers to come and help. And on our website, theshadetree.org, there's a volunteer application. Come in as one person or your whole workplace can sign up as a team. So if you're a midday worker and you want to come in at breakfast time and help, we'd love to have you. We're there 7 days a week, so there's no wrong time to come and volunteer.
A lot of things you could do with the Shade Tree. Marlene, I'm thinking when somebody does that volunteer application on your website, that there's probably at least a little bit of vetting. You're not going to let just anybody come in.
Oh, no, that's right. The first step is the volunteer application. The second step is a meeting and then an orientation. So we move slowly. We do the background check. We make sure that the people that are coming in to volunteer are the right fit for who we serve and how we serve them, all the way from confidentiality statements to that background check. Those are all good investments to make so that the best volunteer opportunity happens for the people that are coming in, more than 1,000 volunteers per year, all the way to the people that are staying there. We also use volunteers in our clinic, so our medical community is more than welcome to volunteer as a doctor, an advanced nurse practitioner, RN. We'd love to have your talent helpful to our women and children as well.
And it's all about safety for the people that are coming to you for help to get out of those domestic violence situations, safety for the workers at Shade Tree, safety for the volunteers.
Yes. And then, of course, back to our community, when we're out in the community, we have the opportunity to be present at so many different health fairs or community events, all the things that happened at UNLV recently for Take Back the Night. There was an event over the past couple of weeks with IMAX being here. Those are all great opportunities for our volunteers to be out in public too, spreading the word that we're there. We have services, and if they'd like to know more about the services or about volunteering, that they can be a part of that solution. Meanwhile, the people that are experts at giving case management or medical care or children's services are back at the shelter, still working with the survivors as they're moving forward.
So you got this app, very exciting.
Yes.
You can find it in the Google Play Store, I imagine, because it's an Android-type app. Mm-hmm. You also have the website where you can get information and also fill out that application to volunteer if you are blessed enough to not be dealing directly with a domestic violence situation. We'll hope for that for everyone as we break the cycle of domestic violence. But as far as calling, because that's got to be where Shade Tree started, with that phone that you pick up when somebody calls and needs your help.
Yes.
I'm sure it's manned 24/7.
Yes. And if for any reason when somebody calls, if we don't answer, just wait 2 minutes and call back. We might have been on another line or maybe just stepped away to help somebody with a baby. You never know. But our number is 702-385-0072. And we haven't really talked about the kids that we shelter, so I want to make sure it's known. If there are teenagers in the family, including teenage boys, those guys are welcome up to their 18th birthday. So when I just said babies, it reminded me we have newborns in the building, toddlers abound, and school-age kids. There isn't anybody that's not welcome to come in, any size family. If you have your items, your birth certificates and ID, that's great. And if you don't, that's okay too. Just come.
Yeah, just be safe. And including the pets. Noah's Animal House?
Noah's Animal House, 8 years old. What an amazing journey this has been. Really brilliant people decided a long time ago that nothing should stand in the way of shelter. And Stacy Alonso and her amazing group of friends put together this campaign, built the building, and now still stand strong, making sure that every single survivor that brings their pet has what they need. Veterinary care, the food, all of the leashes and carriers, everything that any pet could need. And all pets are welcome. It doesn't matter to us. If they're a part of the family, then they can come in. We've seen fish and ferrets and bunnies, and then the traditional dogs and cats. Right now, we have about 35 pets staying with us. And you can imagine that it's very relieving to the survivor to have her best friend right there, but especially for the kids who have already lost so much. But to have their best friend right there really means that that healing journey starts from the minute they walk in the door.
And no doubt the fact that they could not previously take their pets along would keep people in domestic violence, abuse type situations. I can't leave because my animals are here. That person, the abuser, would get to me through my animal.
The abusers do use pets and children as leverage to get the victim to do what they want. They know all too well just how treacherous that could be. They might have even killed previous pets in order to get the victim to do what they want. The amazing part for me has been to see that the children instantly trust us because they know if their pet is safe, they're going to be safe. And they've told me that 6 and 7-year-olds have said, I know it's going to be okay now. So what we couldn't have imagined 10 years ago is now a part of our daily reality, that when the police car comes to our front door and there's a survivor and her children in the back seat, they very well might have a pet carrier, and everybody comes right in and starts their journey right from there.
And when a domestic violence survivor passes through your system and goes on to continue their life in a violence-free setting, what does that feel like to you?
Well, in the past, I can tell you that people whispered. I would go somewhere to get my hair done or my nails done or to conduct business at the bank or at a clothing store, and the people would whisper. But now they're starting to understand they're not alone. And now there are people that have in the past been a client and are now volunteers. They're now employees. They're now board members. They're now speaking out in the community in very bold ways to say, you saved my life and it wasn't me at all. They were brave enough to walk in the front door. They were brave enough and strong enough to do the hard work. We just provided the place and the programs, but their determination is really what got them through and what gets them on to the next phase of sharing the great news with other people that they're not alone and that there is hope and there is a future. There are jobs and houses and families and new relationships that are healthy, all possible if they'll take the step step of saying, I've had enough.
Shade Tree Domestic Violence Shelter is there for us when we need you every day.
Yes.
As far as where we find you, is it a phone call that we do first? Is it a situation where it's 911 and then Metro officers come along with that person who is being subjected to domestic violence? The mom, the kids, the pets.
Mm-hmm. It's either of those things. You can make a phone call. If your life's in danger, definitely call the police. Don't wait 1 minute longer. And if neither of those things are necessary and you just want to come in our front door, our address is 1 West Owens Avenue. We have live security at the front door, and they are there 24 hours a day. That's the first person that's going to greet you. It is the way that we make sure that the entire building is safe, and there's only one doorway to come into the building. Just come in through those double doors, and security will get started with letting us know that you're there. If you have a car, it's fine to drive. If you don't have a car, don't want to bring your car, you can come by bus. Friends can drop you off. If you want to come in from your children's school, let the counselor know that you need help and they can connect you to us. It doesn't matter. You don't have to come in by police. You don't have to call first. If you want to, if you have questions, by all means, give us a call.
The first step has got to be the hardest step.
The first step of enough is enough. Today is the day. I'm not waiting anymore. I don't like being treated like this. I don't think it's going to change. That's the day. Whenever that day happens, that's the day.
You can call
702-385-0072.
As far as the website?
The website is theshadetree.org. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. Twitter is Shade Tree Vegas, and Facebook is just the Shade Tree. You can see all of the activities that are going on, all of the different volunteer groups that come in. You can see all of the different services we provide. We're talking about little snapshots when we're talking on the radio, but you can get all of the information there on the website or on the Facebook page.
And you have a new app.
Yes, and the new app, which has some of the information from the website. We didn't want to make it so big that you didn't have time to look at it. We know that a little bit of information goes a long way, so that's the approach we took. Our phone number's on the app. Check-in for survivors is there on the app. Our volunteer opportunities, it's all there. If you're driving and you don't have the opportunity to write any of this down, if you just Google the Shade Tree, it'll take you to one of those places as well.
Because you're everywhere.
Yeah, now.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Domestic violence is a horrible situation. In some cases, some victims of domestic violence don't survive it. But once you're with the Shade Tree, it's a good place to go if you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, if you want to get some information to help someone else in your life.
Today or at a different time, we're going to be there. So in the future, when you meet somebody that you think might need our services, don't be afraid to refer them our way. The website is a great way to tell them that we're there. If they're not ready today, tell them about it again later and let them know. The best thing that we can do is to not think it's somebody else's problem or that it's going to go away or it's going to get better on its own, because we know tragically that's not true. And every single family that's living with that is just hoping and praying that somebody's going to call for help if they're not able to call themselves. So when you see it in cars, in houses, in apartments, or when you hear of it, don't be afraid to get involved. Don't be afraid to offer help, and don't be afraid to make a report if the police need to be notified, because you very well are going to save somebody's life and let them know it's not acceptable in our community anymore.
We can change it.
Yes.
Awareness is important. Domestic violence is a terrible thing no matter who's being affected. And the Shade Tree Domestic Violence Shelter is there for us 365, 24/7 to come out of the violent situation and into the safety and the healing to a better life.
Yes. Throughout our community, it's likely that you've met so many people that have received our services. They are teachers, they're nurses, they're working in banks, their kids are working in banks now, they are in the cafeterias in our kids' schools, all thriving now because of the services that have been provided in the past and the services that are available today. So while we get frustrated that there is a need for the shelter, at the same time, please know that the services the shelters provide are helping to set people free and move them forward in a great great, healthy way in our community. So let's celebrate the fact that the people did get out and have moved forward with their kids, with their pets, and are reconnected to our community and to their families.
Important for all of us here in Southern Nevada, the Shade Tree Shelter. I'm going to make sure we have all the links and, of course, a podcast, like always, on our Talking Solutions Facebook page. It's a horrible topic, Marlene, as I mentioned in the beginning. Wish we didn't have a need for the shelter, but we do. You're making a real difference. And together, with the heightened awareness to domestic violence and saying that this is not acceptable, we're not going to have this in our community, one person at a time, we can change this.
Absolutely, we can change it. And by working with the kids, we can stop it from moving to the next generation and the generations after that.
Healthy community. That's what we're aiming for.
Yes.
Marlene Richter is the Executive Director of the Shade Tree Shelter. Thank you so much for coming in on today's Talking Solutions.
Thank you so much.
Talking Solutions is a production of the Community Relations Department here at Beasley Media Group Las Vegas. Get more information on today's topic on our Talking Solutions page on Facebook, where you will also find links and a podcast of today's show. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.